Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman, who seems cold, and Jake Bloom. How's it going? Or he's got dry hands. He tried rubbing some lotion, but
or it was just devious. I'm just excited about these prospect profiles, bro. I'm ready to get into it. I got the time tonight. I'm ready to go. This is very exciting. We're getting into 4 prospects to kick it off, which is big time. Some of the top guys. So yeah, man, I'm stoked. How you doing, Jake?
Good. This has been probably the most exciting week of the new year, I think, so far. I don't know. I feel like I've been living under this stress bubble. So this has been really nice to just dive in. I've probably spent, I don't know, close to 10 hours on just these 4 dudes, honestly. I'll talk about it probably a little bit more in the actual process, but it's just crazy how much time you consume watching these dudes play because you really want to understand a lot of the nuance. And that aspect is so much fun, but also at the same time, I feel exhausted already. It's a great time to be alive, but it's also exhausting. So anyway, how you doing, Uriah?
Spreadsheets, bro.
It's almost faster, right?
It's a lot less energy exerted within those.
Nah, I did some watching today too. A little bit of watching yesterday. Good. So nice. I told myself I would because I think I lacked some context last year a little bit in a few different places, and I'm always looking to improve. But before we get into our prospect profiles, which is probably the most fun time of year for this podcast, let's talk about the coaching changes. We finally have all of our major coaching vacancies filled, I guess, pending what happens there with the offensive coordinator from Seattle. I think it's all but a done deal, but I don't think they could say it's done technically because he's actually coaching another team. But let's start with it. Atlanta. Kevin Stefanski, head coach for Cleveland, goes to Atlanta, brings with him Tommy Rees, the OC from Cleveland. How do we feel about position players there in Atlanta?
Got to feel okay about it. I mean, you kind of know the scheme, right? It should be a good rushing attack. They have,
the dog loves it.
Murphy agrees. Definitely have that wide zone scheme. They can use Bijan really effectively there, and you have that continuity with Tommy Rees, right? So I do think that's a good thing, and I do think that it's an improvement for these coaches too, right? Like these coaches have been dealing with the bottom of the barrel really the last couple of years, not having too much talent, and now all of a sudden they're inserted into a team with immense talent at most positions, right? They have an electric wide receiver 1, electric running back, and then a tight end who, I mean, they've proven they can get the tight ends involved. So you should, be kind of excited for a continuation potentially of what we've seen from Kyle Pitts. So I mean, I think the scheme kind of fits the players here, and it makes sense. The hire makes total sense, and Stefanski has been a pretty decent head coach in a tough situation. So, Jake, what do you think about this?
Yeah, the only interesting conversation I've heard so far about this move has been about Drake London. Stefanski and Tommy Rees don't typically use wide receivers similar to Drake London in the slot, or don't really use a ton of wide receiver slot usage in general, right? They're using typically 2 to 3 tight end packages. And I know Drake London isn't necessarily a slot receiver, but he showed extreme prowess over the last 2 seasons in the slot. And I would say, if anything, he has shown significant growth there. So there's, I think, some minor concern with just him being a little bit pigeonholed, especially with not incredibly high caliber quarterback play, and we don't really know who's going to be there, right? Given Michael Penix's injury and the timing of the injury, will he be ready to start the season? There's already been pretty strong rumors of Kirk Cousins not returning, even though I think that he would make a lot of sense just to be once again the bridge. So there's some concerns, I think, from a player personnel perspective, but from a coaching perspective, I think this is probably a really great long-term move. I'm just a little concerned in year 1 what this actually looks like.
Yeah, I think year 1 in general is always a concern when there's, a heavy change like this. But on the Drake London thing, just briefly, they haven't really had anybody like Drake London, at that position over the last few years. So it's is there really a comparison to kind of what they've been doing versus what they're going to do with this kind of guy? So I'm not as concerned because I just feel like it's going to be hard to not utilize him all over the place and within the slot, like he's been utilized. So any extra thoughts there, Uriah?
No, just yeah, not really a thought, but more like a word salad. But if you guys follow JJ Jackareason and you get like his newsletter, he did a whole like coaching change breakdown and point scoring for teams and their new teams. And typically, it's actually a good thing for teams to have a new coach in year one. That's a general statement saying that generally we should expect more offensive output from Atlanta than they did have last year.
Well, it's hard to go backwards in that regard.
Just saying, well, with all these teams.
But yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Moving on, Arizona gets Mike LaFleur, offensive coordinator from the Rams.
Yeah.
It's Arizona.
It's Arizona, but also, I mean, the McVay tree is not a terrible tree. So there's, been one or two failures, but there's been a lot of successes there. So you got to be encouraged by that. You get that kind of Shanahan-ish type, zone scheme again, kind of a similar thing. But a lot of misdirection, motion, like all that stuff you're going to see brought over to the Cardinals. So you're hoping, we don't know exactly what the quarterback situation is going to be, but you're hoping that, the scheme can simplify things for whoever the quarterback is. And if that's Kyler, that definitely would help things out. Yep. So, I mean, I like the move in theory. I like the idea in theory. Jake, thoughts?
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Honestly, Mike LaFleur was one of the head coaching options that I actually was excited about for the Giants as kind of like a sneaky guy if they didn't get one of the big names. I think in general, the McVay/Shanahan tree ends up doing particularly well in head coaching positions, especially the folks that are coming from the offensive coordinator roles that work with McVay directly. I think there's a lot of folks that probably have some question marks around, like Kevin O'Connell, for instance. But for me, in the grand scheme of things, I do like a lot of the adaptation that most of the folks have done outside of the work with McVay, probably outside of the guy who just got hired in Tampa as the OC, Zach Robinson. I think everyone else has been, pretty exceptional. I think Zach will actually probably land on his feet in Tampa. It just feels like too good of a job for folks to be failing in. That being said, this is a really weirdly desolate offense from like a star caliber player position perspective outside of Trey McBride. I just don't think that we can say or provide any like clear glimpse of Marvin Harrison Jr. being that guy yet. And Michael Wilson has a relatively capped ceiling, but a pretty decent floor. So it's just kind of a boring offense with no real quarterback direction. And I don't really know what that means for Mike in year one. But once again, like Uriah said, if JJ Jackareason says that the offense will improve, the offense will improve. So I trust it.
Cool. Moving on to Baltimore. Baltimore went to a different direction here. They took the defensive coordinator from the Chargers, which is an interesting decision, but young guy brought along with him offensive coordinator from Chicago, Declan Doyle, because Doyle rules, and also the defensive coordinator from Miami, Anthony Weaver.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. The defensive head coach is coming back, with the Vrabel and with the Mike McDaniel, however you pronounce it, in Seattle. So, it's a cyclical league. McDonald. Thank you.
McDonald.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, this is an interesting hire. I mean, I do think, the Chargers defense was pretty good this year. I mean, they've been pretty good in general. Their scheme is pretty impressive. Kind of, multifaceted, like different coverages, those kind of things. So should be a pretty good defense, which it already kind of was. Declan Doyle is interesting just because, like, was he calling plays really? Probably not over there because he comes from Chicago, right? That's what
it's hard telling, yeah.
It's hard to tell if it's Ben Johnson or if it's him. So it'll be interesting to see really what it is, but it's, it's a West Coast style thing, play action, bootlegs, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if Lamar is there, it kind of suits him skill wise. So it could be a good fit, but I just don't think we know enough here really to know exactly what we're getting out of Declan Doyle.
I agree.
Yeah, the Minter hire makes a lot of sense. He has really strong ties to Harbaugh. Worked in Baltimore, I think 3 or 4 years prior. Jumped over to Michigan to work with Jim. Then he comes back into the NFL to work again with Jim. It all kind of made sense for him to be in Baltimore. You know, a lot of people think that there was some bad blood at the end of the relationship with Harbaugh. Clearly not the case. And this was really all about, you know, tending to all the relationships that they wanted to have in store, and probably not wanting to provide Harbaugh a new contract after the end of the day, which is probably the most likely thing because he's
so nepotism. Yeah. Okay.
Probably some form of it, honestly. You know, a lot of these teams, they do, like, there's a reason why both Matt LaFleur and Mike LaFleur are now head coaches. There is definitely a form of that, right? Unfortunately.
For sure.
You say it jokingly, but it's unfortunate. It is a fucking sad reality that we have to deal with, right?
That league is ridden with nepotism all over the place. It's insane.
Yeah. It really
Everybody's the son of somebody, let's be honest.
I know.
Or the brother, but yeah.
And same thing with Anthony Weaver. He came from Baltimore as well. The really interesting one is 29-year-old Declan Doyle. Like, he is supposed to be what they are considering one of the next big minds in the game. He got the opportunity to work under Ben Johnson. I think, to Billy's point, yeah, he wasn't calling plays, but neither was Davis Webb, supposedly, in Denver. And he ends up becoming the offensive coordinator. I think this is a natural progression for a lot of these guys. And Jesse Minter gets to kind of provide Declan that opportunity. But I do think that if there's any single offensive coordinator that you could work under who is preventing you from calling plays, any single head coach that you could be working under that will prevent you from calling plays, probably Ben Johnson is the best one to be working under directly right now. Maybe Andy Reid would be number 2, but maybe that's just me trying to be positive about Matt Nagy. Anyway, I think, yeah, I know. I'm trying. I'm gonna cry. But yeah, I think this is all good moves. It seems like a really exciting time, especially because there was a lot of concern around Lamar Jackson about 2-3 weeks ago. This, I think, changes that for me.
Cool. Moving on. Buffalo gets Joe Brady, offensive coordinator from Buffalo. Along with him, Peter Carmichael from Denver as OC, and Jim Leinhart, a guy highly sought after across the league, according to most reports and most fan bases that I interact with on the socials. He lands as just the defensive coordinator for Buffalo, which I think, if you're looking at what's up.
No. Did they steal both the Denver guys there? They got both the OC and the D coordinator. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. This is pretty good news in my opinion. If what they're able to do, I know that coaching, a head coach job involves a lot of stuff, but these guys are more boots on the ground type of deal. I honestly think that, Josh Allen, he's proven time and time again, this Buffalo. I mean, I want to bootlit Buffalo and Josh Allen, but they do have kind of a dynasty there. They just haven't made it to the Super Bowl, but they've been consistently there for so long now. That
this is the story of Buffalo, bro. They get real far, but don't actually finish.
I think this is actually really helpful. So exciting if they could draft a wide receiver.
Yeah, that's fair. They definitely need to get the wide receiver position figured out.
Yeah.
However, I think Joe Brady is what's his name's biggest fan. Who's the wide receiver they drafted?
Keon Coleman.
Yeah, he's apparently his biggest fan after they booted the guy out the door saying he was the one who stood up for Keon Coleman. I mean, what an amazing storyline. But from an offensive perspective, I mean, I think we really don't expect much changing, right? This is what was there, so really nothing there. I wonder if this whole thing makes me think more about Denver than it does Buffalo, the fallout in Denver. I mean, good teams deal with this all the time in terms of their talent being taken away because they're so good, right? The Patriots dealt with this for years, seeing Josh McDaniels go and their DC go and their everybody go year after year. It's people want these
the Lions coaches. Last year.
Yeah, the Lions is another great example. And so I'm a little concerned about what we might see in Denver. However, obviously the offense is more Sean Payton's brainchild. So that'll probably, continue to be okay. But does the defense take a step back, which was a really big part of their success this year and keeping them in games and keeping Bo Nix, on the field and all that. So yeah, this makes me think more about Denver than it does Buffalo.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, and to be clear, I didn't put this down correctly, so I apologize. Jim Leonard was the assistant head coach and passing game coordinator. He was not the DC, and P. Carmichael was the senior offensive assistant, but he was the OC under Peyton for 14 years in New Orleans. So just something to be cognizant of.
Live fact checking right here on Dynasty Underdog.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's probably for me to do better in next time. Anyway,
I'm like the guy from Weatherman. I just read the teleprompter
word for word.
Set me up for failure.
A whale's vagina. So I was reading up on Joe Brady, and a lot of people talk about him like he is actually more coordinating around just like good locker room prowess rather than like his generalized play calling, even though that was definitely a lot of what was talked about when he was at LSU and he came over to the NFL. He was either in Carolina, I want to say, before he came to
Joe Brady was there,
with that horrible regime. I think that
Matt Rule, I think.
Matt Rule regime. That sounds right, because it was a very short window he was there. Yeah, that sounds right. Then he came over as the QB coach to Buffalo the year after.
Matt Rule.
They have to be, right?
I think so.
But the biggest thing that I took away from that is that if there is some delegation here where Joe Brady really is more so the GM or CEO head coach that they preclude John Harbaugh to be, that really sets up a lot of positiveness around some generalized control from those coordinators. And I think that for especially a rookie head coach is probably a more promising thing to do than some of these younger guys who come in and try and handle offensive coordinator position as well as try to be a head coach, and then they don't know how to manage the players, the whole nine. So if that is the case, this will probably end pretty well for him. If not, this will probably be a very swift hire and fire, because to Uriah's point, they are in that like true dynasty mode where they need to win a Super Bowl within these next probably 3 to 4 years, while Josh is in, the most physical prime that he has. And then as he starts to creep into those mid-30s, as I can talk about, you just don't feel the same when you wake up. So I can't imagine when you get absolutely crunched by like 3 defensive tackles and a defensive end and 2 linebackers all throughout the game, you're going to wake up the same way, right? So all that to say, this is probably a pretty flatlined hire, but there's something to be excited about just because there is potentially positive change going around that locker room.
Play calling in Buffalo. Josh Allen, go be Superman. It's got to be pretty easy over there.
All right. Next one. Cleveland gets Todd Monken, OC from Baltimore.
I mean, I don't know. It's a decent hire, I guess. The Cleveland offense is just so uninspiring. It's just like hard to get excited about this. But he brings that air raid type offense. So if they can somehow get decent QB play and some extra weapons, they might be able to do something.
Pro Bowl quarterback.
2, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Right, well, okay. Wait, or who are we counting as the second? Joe Flacco or the other guy?
It's Joe Flacco.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Former Pro Bowl quarterback in there too, if you want. But yeah, it's just so uninspiring that like I'm not sure what his scheme can really do for this team at this point. They're going to really need to overhaul the offense for, I think, this to matter. And it's just dysfunction in Cleveland. I mean, the other part of this that is a little concerning is who is it, the defensive coordinator, I think, who wanted the position. They basically were like, no, but the players loved him, right? And so now is there going to be fallout because they went a different direction? And so that I don't know how well this whole thing is going to work out in general. So I just have some concern there. Jake, thoughts?
Yeah, Jim Schwartz was the guy you were thinking of, former Detroit Lions head coach. I want to say.
Yeah.
Another one to Uriah's point before. Some of these guys just continue to get opportunities in the league. It's pretty insane. But in fairness to Jim, you're right. The defense absolutely loves him. The defense has been performing at a relatively high level, considering how shit the offense has been over the last 2.5 to 3 years. Yeah. So, there's a reason why they should want to be keeping someone like Jim Schwartz in the building, but it seems like they've burnt that bridge and he doesn't want to stay there. That being said, Todd Monken, I think from an offensive play calling perspective, actually doesn't get enough appreciation for some of the work that he did in Baltimore. There was like the clear decline in year 3, I believe it was, but I think that also aligns pretty well with Lamar Jackson not being healthy for 80% of the season. That being said, this is probably the worst landing spot for a singular head coach. He's one of the oldest hires of the group, and he'll most likely probably be the first one to get fired of the group because it is Cleveland's. They don't really give a shit, and they currently don't have a direction at quarterback. So we're either going to see the person who won't be named, the man behind the curtain, Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel, or potentially another rookie quarterback that will be drafted this upcoming year that will probably not be a first-round pick. So it's not going to be particularly pretty there. And Quinshon Judkins broke his leg in like a bajillion pieces, but I suppose it was a clean break, actually. So I shouldn't say that. But yeah, anyway. Not a lot to be excited about.
Shout out Dylan Simpson. All right.
Dylan Simpson. Hell yeah.
On I think brighter note, we have Las Vegas brought in Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator from Seattle, who will be spending the rest of his weekend prepping for the Super Bowl, or Superb Owl, as some people would like to say. Clint Kubiak, I think that's me, mostly me. But I think it's cool, man. They're going to get themselves a brand new quarterback, that Cheeser, Mendoza, which is kind of cool. Nothing says Las Vegas Raiders like Mendoza, so it's just kind of like funny that like the culture that like I think that everyone kind of the stigma that people put on like the Raiders franchise, like this like hardened, rah, and then you get like this like sweet dude who's probably never cussed ever in his life. To be the quarterback.
He actually does. It's funny. I didn't think he did.
He?
I saw some interviews with him and some videos, and he lets it loose a little bit more than you
Okay,
think.
all right. I just figured it's like a cross between like Phillip Rivers and like Drew Lock as far as like how they talk outwardly.
That's a combination.
There's like HE double hockey sticks out loud or something like that.
Yeah, like oh my god, oh sorry.
I don't know if he has the Lock swag, sideline swag. I'm not sure if he has that, but I guess that's where the Phillip Rivers side comes in.
Yeah. But Kubiak, that's cool. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, I like it a lot. I think that team needs a complete overhaul from an offensive standpoint, and they have some weapons to really kick it off, to kickstart it. So yeah, I like it. I mean, we've seen a lot from Clint this year. You know what you're getting, right? You're getting that Shanahan tree, that misdirection, outside zone play action stuff. Like exactly what you're getting. You saw a lot of it this year, moving JSN all over the place, out of the backfield, all that good stuff. So you can expect, I think, a really exciting scheme coming out of Vegas. And so yeah, I'm optimistic about this hire. I'm really hoping that they can turn things around. Not going to get overly excited from a fantasy perspective about Mendoza necessarily, but I'll tell you what, it's a pretty good position to be in, looking at Sam Darnold, and if he can do just average at, then you're going to get a decent offense out of him and the coordinator here. So yeah, it's encouraging. What do you think, Jake?
I don't have anything to add. This is definitely the most exciting hire, just like how it's going to directly impact the offense. And there are some really interesting pieces right now, thinking about Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers and how they could be used. It really does beg to question that what is that wide receiver and who will kind of come in, because I don't think Trey Tucker is going to have that massive of a role, but he probably is the most defined. Jack Besh, what the Besh. And then the other guy that I really don't want to talk about, Deontay Thornton. So yeah, we can move it.
Yeah, I think they need new weapons. They need new weapons. Yeah, Brock Bowers though should be awesome.
Is awesome. All right, guy I don't know much about, but maybe Billy knows a little bit more since he's in Miami, although it's not his team. Miami brought in Jeff Hafley, DC from Green Bay. I never heard of the guy until a couple weeks ago.
I don't know. Like, who's the OC there? Do we know? Do we know who the OC is? Like, this again. I mean, we're playing fantasy, so thinking of it through the lens, especially offensive fantasy, because we're not playing IDP or anything. Like, Jeff Haley doesn't really do anything for me, like like Mike McDaniel was doing, bringing a scheme like that. Yeah. So we need to know a little bit more about offensively what the plan is here, and yeah, I don't really know what that's going to be. This isn't a very exciting hire, though. Hafley doesn't have a ton of experience. Not really, we don't really know what he's bringing. But I will say, his initial press conferences and all that, like, definitely seemed encouraging from just like a personality standpoint. But outside of that, I don't really know. Jake, any thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, I just wrote it into the show sheet. It's Bobby Slowick got hired, former Houston Texans offensive coordinator. It's fine. It's fine. They also have Nathaniel Hackett in there, just in case you really want to get excited. God. Yeah, he is the quarterback's coach. The only guy that they did bring in that I happen to really like is Tyke Tolbert. He is a former Giants wide receiver coach, so I do know him pretty well. He was there for 3 years. He's been a basically consistent wide receiver coach in the NFL since 2003 across several different teams, so very well respected. That being said, that wide receiver room I think is going to change pretty drastically. So this is another team, once again, it's like quarterback is such a precarious position right now in the NFL, and what we're going to be talking about across so many of these teams is that there's a huge quarterback hole, right? So them being able to solve that and figuring out how that quarterback room is going to be even positioned in 2026 is going to be pretty interesting in Miami.
The only interesting thing to mention about Slowick, he does come from the Shanahan tree, right? He was the passing game coordinator there, but he was also the passing game coordinator last year for the Dolphins. Forgot about that. So there is going to be some continuity there probably in terms of offensive scheme. So that is the only thing you can kind of, feather in the cap. Like, all right, maybe, A-chain and those kind of things aren't really going to change too much in terms of usage. So worth putting out there.
Good show.
All right. The New York Football Giants brought in John Harbaugh, head coach from Baltimore. Solid. Denard Wilson from Tennessee as their DC, Matt Nagy from Kansas City as their OC. From the outside looking in, just by name recognition only and resume, this is probably the best looking trio of coaches that the Giants have had in recent history, in my opinion. So that's exciting. Let's get their superstars healthy and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's get Skate-Boo healthy. Let's
for sure. Get neighbors healthy. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, for sure. I think the match is interesting with Harbaugh and how his kind of like offensive identity is with like it's more physical, kind of run centric, where Matt Nagy is a little bit more like shotgun heavy, like RPO stuff or whatever. So, which I think actually fits the quarterback, to be honest. So I think from a schematic standpoint, it makes sense for the skill set of the players they have. So I do like that, and I imagine that Harbaugh is not going to be too overbearing with Nagy, given some of the success he's had. So maybe they'll mix it up a little bit more and be a little bit more run centric than you'd expect. But yeah, this is encouraging all around, I think, for this team. It's like your guy said, this is as good as it gets in terms of a trio of coaches, and also as good as it's been, I think, in New York in some time. So what do you think, Jay?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. As a fan, we didn't get either of the coordinators. I think the fan base really wanted. That being said, the Giants really stuck their neck out for Todd Monken to be the OC and for him to go a different direction. The front office really showed their skin by basically showing to the world that they had no real number 2 in the lineup, which was pretty disappointing because we lost out on a lot of other exciting pieces that ended up getting signed elsewhere. That being said, I do think that I agree with both of you. This is probably the best lineup of 3 coaches that we've had in a very, very long time. The one thing I will shout out, I've been watching a ton of Denard Wilson's Tennessee tape, and the dude sets up some amazing zone coverage designs where you basically just like lose track of where his corners are, and then they just pop up out of nowhere and just pick the ball off. Hilariously enough, he doesn't actually get along very well with a lot of dudes who don't understand assignments. So I think this Giant secondary is going to be pretty depleted probably by the end of year 1, and then hopefully will be completely overhauled in year 2 because we got some shit in the secondary. Offensively, if they do decide to run the ball more, I do think that we'll probably need some more bodies. Doubt that we can probably handle the workload with Scadaboo coming back with that injury, even though he says that he's going to be ready for training camp. And Tyrone Tracy and Devlin Singletary, I just don't think have that juice, even though they're both relatively efficient runners. So that being said, lots to look forward to, I think, as a Giants fan from like a competitive perspective. I still don't think that these are the best dynasty point scoring moves for the offense that you really would be looking forward to be excited about, but hopefully I'm proven wrong.
Cool. Pittsburgh. I was talking to my buddy at work about this today, but yeah, Pittsburgh hired Mike McCarthy as head coach of Dallas, or former head coach of Dallas, former head coach of Green Bay. I don't know. I think he must interview well. I'm not sure what they're trying to do there. You would kind of
because he lies about what he does. You remember that for Dallas?
I watched every stat.
I watched every snap. He's like, I didn't do that.
I wanted the job.
Motherfucker, it's hilarious.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference. I mean, it will be interesting, and like I'm going to watch. Like if Aaron Rodgers comes back, you got Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback for Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh. Like that's cool. But I don't know, man.
These guys are no better than us. He's not actually watching film. Quessy is over here using PFF grades to make draft picks for the Vikings. This is just nonsense, and they want us to believe that they're better than us. Get out of here. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to be encouraged about here. I'm sorry, like. We've seen this over and over, like the Pete Carroll hires, like going back in the Wayback Machine and grabbing these old coaches who haven't really changed their ways. It's not a great move most of the time. Sometimes it works. A lot of the time it doesn't. Mike McCarthy going over there with Aaron Rodgers, like I don't know if the scheme really fits that much anymore. Like McCarthy does like to go vertical a little bit. He likes to get down the field. Aaron Rodgers can't really do it like that no more. You know what I mean? So I don't really know if this is going to work out. I get why they're doing it. I get the idea about it, but this just seems like a, kind of 1 year like holdover until they can get, someone better in there. I'm sure it won't be 1 year, but it feels like this is just kind of wait until we can get the next big guy, in the next cycle or something like that. So I'm not very excited about it or encouraged about anything getting right in Pittsburgh. Jake, any different thoughts there?
No, the only thing I liked that they did was their defensive coordinator hire. They picked up Patrick Graham. He actually, funny enough, was with the Giants during some of our worst years, but we were actually relatively good defensively. Then went over to the Raiders. One of the few guys who ended up lasting 3 different head coaches, I believe it was. He just particularly has relatively good schematics and knows how to set up particularly depleted rosters well. I don't know what that looks like in a little bit less depleted defensive scheme like Pittsburgh. So I think they'll probably still be relatively the same team defensively, set up well. I just don't know what Mike McCarthy is going to do in Pittsburgh with a city that wants them to just basically run the ball down the other team's throat and win, 10-7. They don't give a shit how they win. They just want to win games and they want to win a Super Bowl. And I just don't foresee that happening during this contract. So yeah, I think this is going to only piss off the fans, to both your points. The other thing too is like, this goes against everything that organization has ever believed in, right? They've had 3 head coaches over the last, 45 years, maybe even closer to 60 years. And so it just feels completely asinine to upset that image of your organization for like not a top tier hire. If they did this for Harbaugh, I'd be like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I understand. But doing it for McCarthy, to know that he's realistically only going to be there for a max 2 to 3 years, just feels short-sighted.
This is like a rebound hire almost, it's like that's what it feels like. That's the word I was looking for earlier. But anyway, we can keep moving. That's the last one.
Okay. Tennessee, Robert Saleh, obviously defensive coordinator from San Francisco, former head coach of the Jets, and as head coach, and then he brought in Brian Dable, former head coach of the Giants, and Gus Bradley as DC.
Sure.
Honestly, it's not that bad as far as, it's still a defensive-minded head coach, and he's going to call the defense. Brian Dable is fine. It's cool. Still, it's kind of like the same thing it's kind of like the same reaction I have to the Giants coaching hires, in that this is a better-looking coaching staff roster that Tennessee's had in quite a while. So, let's go.
Yeah, the only thing with Robert Saleh is like, what the hell did anybody see about what he did with the Jets that made them want to hire him as a head coach again? It's just like that kind of was a little bizarre to me. So, I don't know about like from just like an overall organization or team management perspective how that's going to work out. Maybe it's fine. Defensively, probably a good thing because he's a fantastic, defensive mind. So no doubt about that. Brian Dable, I kind of like this for Cam Ward, like a QB centric guy with the offense is QB centric. Kind of the motion, the vertical shots with him. Like I think they're going to do some stuff like that. And if there was anybody who, like, I'm not saying the thing with Dable, right? Little in over his head as a head coach, probably. Okay, some guys are better as coordinators in general. Obviously, he's not the only reason Josh Allen got right. Josh Allen's a lot of the reason Josh Allen got right. But, I wonder what it would look like if Daboll had his whole time with Dart. You know what I mean? Had, from the jump and had, 3-4 years of wiggle room to kind of work with him. And I think as an offensive coordinator, he has a little bit more wiggle room to potentially stick around for a while and get things right with Cam Ward. So I really like it for Ward. And, there's not many better hires for, I think a quarterback's development. For all the things we don't like about Daboll, I think he's a good offensive mind and he's good at developing offensive players. So that's the hope here. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, I completely agree. I honestly think that from an offensive perspective, he's been one of my favorite hires in New York for a very, very long time. And we've had a lot of offensive hires. Pat Shurmur, we had fucking Ben McAdoo. These are like some like absolutely god awful plays, plus having to bring in Jason Garrett during the Joe Judge era. So needless to say, when Brian Dable came in, it really did change a lot of the general positioning of how the general fan base felt about the offense. And that was with Daniel Jones, who majority of people didn't like, including Brian Dable, who did not want to continue moving forward with Daniel Jones as quarterback. And I do think that Dable's probably biggest qualm that he'll look back on as a head coach would be the fact that he had to end up coaching the Giants for as long as he did with Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback. That being said, he wanted Drake May and both Jay and Daniels in the 2024 draft. He wanted Cam Ward in the 2025 draft and asked for the front office to trade up for all three of those players. He ended up getting the trade up for Jackson Dart. And honestly, truth be told, I had Jackson Dart as my 40th overall offensive player in last year's draft, and he turned Jackson Dart into a startable quarterback in the NFL, to the point where people have him up in their top 10 quarterbacks in Dynasty right now. Like, that has a lot to do with the head coach. It had also a lot to do with Mike Kafka, who was a former quarterback as well, and offensive mind who worked under Andy Reid. Like, I don't want to put all of the emphasis on Dable, but I do think that this is a perfect hire for Cam Ward to be able to get almost like a prime reset. I do think that Mike McCoy clearly helped. Like, once they made the changes to get Callahan out of that entire organization, Cam Ward looked better. He looked more confident. He looked like he was actually handling press conferences properly. He looked like he was handling the offense properly. It looked like he managed relationships within his team better. Like, everything improved. So clearly there was someone that was bringing that team down, and they got rid of him. That being said, like, this does feel like this is the time to buy Cam Ward if you can on the low, and try and get in as fast as possible, because I do think that Brian Dable will only benefit Cam Ward.
Yeah, just real quick, last thing is Brian Dable does like the quarterback to run. Now, not that Cam Ward is like the most athletic guy, but he's also not the least athletic guy. Like, he can move. So I wonder if we see a little bit more of Cam Ward on the move this year. And that's, good things for fantasy if successful. So worth putting out there. Iston in the comments real quick. Cam Ward call is fire. Yeah, I think there's something there for sure.
God, I loved it when Callahan was involved. The Giants. That was a good timing. Good time in Cowboys history.
What? Yeah. Callahan with the Giants? Was he there?
Yeah, right. Was he not?
Jason Garrett.
Oh, Garrett. My bad.
Garrett,
I came in conversation. My bad.
Yeah. Also, yeah, good time for you guys.
And just for me, just a gloat a little bit. Dallas Cowboys did sign Christian Parker as their defensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus is out. So we should expect to see some better defense just in general from the Dallas Cowboys secondary, and that's awesome. So,
was he? Where is he? Was he at the Eagles or
Philadelphia?
He was a Philly?
Philadelphia. Yeah, passing game coordinator, secondary coach underneath Fangio.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely better than what you were dealing with, at least theoretically. So,
I like how you said Fangio like it was Pangea for some reason. That's how I heard that. Fangio.
Pangea. Things were back then.
Simpler times.
Tectonic plates weren't beefing.
They really fucked us up, man. Just think about how easy it was to just move around.
You just go anywhere you wanted by foot.
Oh my God.
Fuck you, Southwest. Cool. So that's our coaching. More time on that than I thought. But that was our coaching recap, which was awesome. Thank you guys for having more insight than I could ever possibly have on those guys. That went well. So now for the fun part. We hop into our first ever set of prospect profiles for the year. We've been doing this a while, and not to toot our own horns, we do okay. Jake and Billy are pretty good with the film. They spend quite a bit of time doing it, have kind of hammered out a process with scoring and all that kind of makes sense and tweaks throughout the year. I typically look at the spreadsheets, but then I'm using my eye peepers a little bit more. So I don't declare Caleb Johnson RB2 emphatically. But I still love Caleb Johnson. So, and you never know.
Year two.
Well, let's hop into it though. First one will be some easy names everybody should know. So Makai Lemon, wide receiver, USC. Let's see here. 2024 versus Michigan, head injury, hospitalization, missed 10 games, 10 days, 1 game. Notes there, I guess, that Jake wanted to add. But we'll hop into the analytics here about it first. Oh, that's big. Smaller. I only have one good eye. Here we go. All right, cool. Makai Lemon, USC. Yards after the catch per reception, 6.4. Good mark. ADOT, 10.4. Good dot. Work out of the slot, 70.6%. Don't ever let anybody tell you that a slot, oh, he's just a slot receiver. We talk about this quite a bit every year. You want your really good wide receivers to play out of the slot. You just do. You really just do. So him playing 70.6% out of the slot in college is great. His yards per team pass attempt is 2.8. He clears that bucket of, 2.2, 2.3. Yards per route run, 3.13. Excellent. I believe that his yards per route run versus man and his yards per route run versus zone are both above 3. And I believe he's the only one in this class to do such. He's wide receiver 1. Contested catch percentage, 66.7. His first downs per route run is 13.5, which is is really good. His man per yard per route run is 3.29. His zone yard per route run is 3.09. Just a baller. Analytically, all the marks.
Yeah, I mean, he really does hit all those marks analytically, and
tell me his film's good.
He's a good player. I think he's a good player, but I don't think, and I really don't think that many in this class really reach that like elite talent level, and I do think that he's kind of being pegged as that just because he's kind of best-ish in the class and for sure best on paper in the class, right? So I think, when people see that, they're like, oh, wide receiver 1 easy. And he might be, again, technically in this class because I don't think there's a ton that can really elevate to that high tier. But just getting into it for me, I'll just kind of go through the general comments. I think he's excellent mid route. Like he has really good technique through the stem. I think he displays really good manipulation movement. Like you see peak moves, head fakes, like all that kind of stuff, and really purposeful throwing it on people, and pretty successful with that too. But I do think he lacks really great release technique, not a really diverse package in general. And I do think he struggles with press coverage. Like if dudes get their hand on him at the line and physical coverage, it really disrupts his routes. And so, that I do think is going to be something to watch at the next level. He does feast on short area targets and screens. Like you see a lot of those kind of, those kind of plays schemed up for him. Now he does get down the sideline. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you see that contested catch rate, like clearly he's, getting down the sideline, getting into contested catch situations, and he's converting them. So don't get me wrong. He does that, but it does feel like a lot of his yards were, created out of the kind of behind or near the line of scrimmage. I think he's good, but not great after the catch. Like he definitely does have some shiftiness, some elusiveness, really good balance more than anything, to be honest, through contact. But he's just not overly dynamic. And I mean, he does display burst through the stem of the route, but I don't know if he really has burst or high end speed thereafter. Excellent ball skills. I think he's really good at the catch point, especially for his frame. Like he does make good contested catches, and he has really good body control, and actually like, a average to above average catch radius, which is credit to him. And, maybe it's just his build and he has, long arms or whatever for his size, but he definitely gets up there, gets the ball, and he's not really disrupted by contact at the catch point, in my opinion. I think, again, he could improve the footwork in general, especially the release technique. Excellent zone coverage recognition, plus just general awareness overall, field vision, zone awareness, sideline awareness, kind of got it all. But again, lacks the above average acceleration, deceleration. And the last thing I'll say, this is reiterating what I said, but just how I put it here, he displays outstanding and uncanny ball skills, especially for his size. So I think that's the best part of his game. He got a 64 out of potential 100, which is a good mark, not a great mark. And this is the top of the class, and I'll say none of these guys have gotten over 70, and I definitely think we saw some 70s from me last year, like one or two. So just kind of highlighting the ceiling on this class, right? Jake, what are your thoughts? Anything different? Same? I know that I know you liked Lemon slightly less than I did.
Yeah, I don't think this man. Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily anything to do with anything different than what you said. I just don't think I was as blown away in a couple of different marks. So specifically with his route technique, I think this is where he gets dinged the hardest for me, specifically in beating press and his release concepts. We're talking about a couple of things here that really stuck out. So I said this will come up in both athleticism and route technique. Lemon is a flat platform runner, which allows for decent manipulation, but flattens out his proposed complexity and redirection, stem nuance, his individual manipulation movement, not his total manipulation, and then ability to break into space and both lateral burst and separation. So one of my issues with him is that I've noticed that like when he ends up breaking off of any of his routes, it's just one of those like flat-footed movements that doesn't allow or call for the type of separation you'd be looking for at the NFL level. So he's doing this against like shittier corners in the college game and still not gaining that elite separation I'd be hoping for in that same position, which is a major concern for me because realistically it's going to be locked down significantly more. That being said, the other aspect of this is the fact that he's not physical whatsoever. The dude does not use his hands. He doesn't hand fight. He doesn't hand check. He doesn't do much at the line. And that just doesn't scream well to me if folks are going to be able, specifically defensive coordinators are going to be able to smell that out and to say, go ahead and be physical against the kid. Because if he can't do that, then he's automatically negated. That being said, I agree with Billy. Dude's hand skills are incredible. Like, I really do think that for as short of a catch radius as he did have, the fact that he would just come down with all these contested catches was just absolutely asinine. His ball tracking, his hands, I had at borderline elite level, really was like he was wearing glue on his gloves. Athleticism is another area where I think he ended up losing quite a bit of points for me. He just doesn't come off as an exceptional speed or burst guy. I have him basically at average. I had him as average at yak ability, and I had him at borderline elite with balance. I think his general height, I think he's either listed at like 5'10 and a half or 5'11. He's somewhere in that range. You could see that that allows for his just extreme balance with the ball in his hands. I do think that there's something there to why he's used behind the line of scrimmage so often. It does provide him a good enough base to basically release off of. He just doesn't have that exceptional burst or even elusiveness to just get out of those pockets. So that all being said, my final thing that I'll say about him is above average NFL contributor. Think of your standard edition college football player slot that lacks dynamism to play, but is crucial to the individual team's success. There's a world where Lemon finds the right offense and is a defining piece in their offense, but he won't create that by himself. The perfect recipe is needed for him to be successful. His inability to beat the press is a major sign of concern as he basically shies away from any physical contact altogether. His bloated yards per route run metrics will be blown in our faces, but the reality is that folks blossom in college football versus zone doesn't necessarily translate as well, specifically when in the slot versus out wide. So my major concerns for him are just going to be, will he be that like elite contributor that we all hope for because of what he was able to do in college? I just don't foresee it happening, but I do think that he'll still be a very, very vital NFL player for a lot of rosters. He'll probably hover around like that 1,000-yard mark with like 85 to 90 receptions, but I just don't think he'll get to those like extreme levels that we'd really be hoping for, where he's being talked about as potentially, you know, the 103 in this rookie class. And I just don't foresee that.
Yeah, it's funny seeing our grades back to back. I gave him a 64. You got him at 62 and a half. Yeah. And it's like there's just so many similarities in where we see the deficiencies. It's actually pretty funny. So yeah, I mean the listeners will get to see this soon enough. We'll definitely distribute out a copy once we get through a couple more of these players. But yeah, interesting player. I just don't see the JSN in him. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see that. Even when JSN was in college, it was more dynamic and a little bit sharper in general. And he was able to kind of, you know, beat these guys, these physical players, kind of regardless. So I know everybody wants him to be that, but I don't quite see it. I do think he can be a good player still, though, like Jake said.
Okay.
We can move.
Moving on. Carnell Tate, wide receiver OSU. Missed a month in 2025 due to an unspecified injury. It's like hockey. They're like, oh yeah, dude's going to be out for a week. Upper body injury. It's like, well, okay, what's that? It's a lower body injury. It's like, okay, cool. I bet bettors love that shit. But okay, here we go. Here are the numbers. Carnell Tate. Yards after the catch per reception, 4.5. Kind of makes sense when his ADOT's 14.6, which is great. So he's working downfield a little bit more, working out of the slot at only 10.1%. I don't particularly like that. You guys may disagree, but typically that is not something I enjoy seeing. His yard per out run, career yard per out run is 3.02. Excellent. Contested catch percentage, 85.7. So I'd like to look at how many contested catches, like chances he had, but the fact that he's coming down with 85.7 is excellent. First down per route run is 12.07. His man yard per route run is 3.12. Excellent. Zone yard per route run 2.7. That will do just fine. By the numbers, looks good. The yards after the catch and slot usage are the only two knocks. But he comes from Ohio State. Like, that's good stuff. So what do you guys see? Billy's muted.
God damn it. Had to get back to the screen. Sorry. I just wanted to say, I know the team name is off, so the yards per team pass attempt weren't showing, but 2.1 yards per team pass attempt. I just fixed
2.1.
So
okay, cool.
Yes. So not a terrible mark. It's pretty good mark. Definitely above the average.
That'll do.
Yeah, and it's funny. I actually think this is one where a lot of the numbers kind of line up with what he does, like the yards after catch being low makes sense. The slot rate makes sense. Like the way I see him,
there's a personality in these numbers.
Definitely, and it really shone through on the film. So right from the top, deep threat with some technical nuance, which he's going to be playing outside for sure more than not. Good stem nuance and manipulation movement, heavily reliant on athleticism to separate, but doesn't translate to evasiveness after the catch. So I do think he lacks that elusiveness and that yak ability. It really shows up on the tape. Also, I think he lacks balance and strength through contact after the catch. Again, all kind of wrapped up in that yards after catch ability. I do think he has difficulty with physical press coverage, especially at the line of scrimmage, but outstanding ball skills. This isn't. I mean, there's a couple of these guys that we're talking about today have really, really good ball skills. Excellent at the catch point and in contested catch situations, high in speed and burst, but mostly seen before the catch. Phenomenal aggressive blocker. I do think that he does put that on the film. Like, dude is all over these guys, which is different than, say, one of the guys we're going to talk about, KC Concepcion. If that's how you Concepcion?
Concepcion, yeah.
Concepcion. All right, let's put a little flavor on it. But with a guy like that, I thought there was a clear difference in terms of like aggressiveness and engagement. Not that Concepcion is really bad necessarily, but there's definitely a noticeable difference. Just worth putting that out there for a guy like Tate. So yeah, I think the story of this is he's a pretty good route runner. He has really great ball skills, but he's kind of a one-trick pony right now, and he really doesn't offer that much after the catch. That said, Tate got one of the highest marks for me in general. I really liked him a lot. I do think that his game will translate at the next level. I think we need to see him develop and become more versatile in general. What do you think, Jake?
Damn, dude. That's honestly what I have for him as well. I also
we did grade him out almost identically, by the way. You noticed that, right? It was like 68 and 69, I think, for the two of us. Or no, you had a 66.5 and I had 68, but very close.
Yeah. I dropped his score because you told me that I was not properly grading in one of or two of the things.
At least
I was grading out of 5.
easy adjustment, though.
Yeah, I was grading out of 5 for everything, and then these like 2 things I was grading out of 5, but they were out of 2.5, and so everything was just slightly inflated. So I had to reduce Carnell Tate's score a little bit. Yeah, I think he was like rocking close to 70, and now he's down to like 66.5 total. That being said, honestly, Carnell Tate, I think, is one of those guys similar to the miscategorization of Quinshon Judkins. Sounds weird to use this as a comparison here, but we are looking at players that are playing in such elite programs that they get overshadowed or their roles change because of the offenses that they play in. And I think Carnell Tate is the personal limiter to what Jeremiah Smith did this year. And I think to the opposition, Jeremiah Smith limited Carnell Tate's upside. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Carnell Tate is actually a relatively decent run blocker. So you actually do see Tate more often than not blocking out of the X. You don't really ever see him in the slot. You almost never see Jeremiah Smith on the same run snaps as you do Carnell Tate. So just something to be mindful of. That being said, I did say heavy reliance on the jump step and or the 1-2 rocker. He loves both of those. They're clean and efficient, but there isn't a ton more to his route running regime. Creates a ton of separation from speed and acceleration and flat-footed corners. I do think that the Big Ten in general does lack sometimes with corner depth, specializing in maximizing off of Jeremiah pulling QB1, cornerback 1, and eagling away from him. I do think that is shown in tape more often than not. Like, this dude creates separation by basically a singular jab and then just blow him by dudes. His top end speed isn't necessarily there, but that acceleration is very, very present. The area where I think he ended up catching up to or past a lot of the other wide receivers is honestly just his general ball skills. I tend to always walk away more impressed with the bigger, leaner wide receivers when they can contort and manage their hands from range, given how much more they need to basically load up into their elbows. It's more impact or even this elongated impact into their hands. Seeing Tate complete targets versus Texas, Michigan, Penn State in the same fashion really shows his consistency here. And these are basically all sideline contested catches where he is just plucking the ball away from corners like no tomorrow. He honestly reminds me so much of T. Higgins when T. Higgins was at Clemson, just literally like man manipulating folks in really small areas. Even George Pickens, you saw it in George Pickens tape too. I'm not saying that he's like those players, but he does similar things in those small spaces that I think people should be excited about, especially when you think about how he could be used in the red zone. The last thing I did want to add here is that he's also a really good disguise hands catcher, which I actually didn't see a lot in these 4 wide receivers. So he really showed out here. And what I mean by disguise hand catching, he is very late to show where his hands are going to go to
like
the
George
ball.
Pickens.
Just like George, yeah. And I think that ability really does translate well to the NFL. All those 2 wide receivers I called out before, I think, are the 2 guys that really do that incredibly well. His athleticism, as Billy said, I won't really dig in too much there. I think there's some relatively translatable NFL ability, and I'll just shy straight into the overall review. As the team's above average wide receiver blocker, Tate gets pigeonholed into getting a ton of running reps and target competition with Jeremiah Smith, which makes it borderline impossible to pop off the screen from a target hog perspective. Yet, when he finally is targeted, there's enough visibility there with Tate to understand what an upside situation can look like for him. He has the ability and the fundamentals to seamlessly get into a pro team at a star level. He just played against the media, and the media won here, in my opinion. And by that, I just mean like he is just kind of like buried behind this proverbial depth chart. But in reality, he ended up creating a pretty significant role in a team. And he also missed, this was one of the reasons why I included it, he missed close to a month in 2025 due to an unspecified injury. We still have no idea what it was. And I think that should be thought of. I think that there was a lot more to his game, and there's a few injury concerns, especially with the last two wide receivers, that I think also hamstrung their seasons. So that being said, all in all, I was pretty excited about Carnell Tate, and he ended up scoring, of these four, my highest score of a 66.5.
Cool. Next one on the docket is KC Concepcion. Some flavor. Let's knock him first right now for being injury prone. He had 24 lingering foot injuries with no missed games, and 25 hamstrings with no missed games.
No, that's the year, right? That's the year.
Oh, okay.
Lingering foot injury in 24, not 20. 24 foot injuries would have him off the board.
Oh, okay. In the year 24, he had a foot injury, didn't miss any games, and in the year 25, he had a hamstring and missed no games. That makes a lot more sense.
That's Jake's fault. No apostrophe really fucked us.
24 foot injuries. I think
like, wow, this guy's Superman.
I could see the confusion.
Please don't draft this man. He has 24 lingering foot injuries and 25 hamstring injuries. Do not draft this.
Do not. All right. Cool. Shit. By the numbers, looks good overall. Solid. Yeah. So yards after the catch per reception, 7.2. Awesome. Not getting tackled right away. Knows what he's doing. Good vision. ADOT 12.3. Excellent. That's kind of where you want your boys to be. Slot, getting used out of slot over 30%, 34.4%. Yards per team pass attempt, 2.3. Excellent. To be above that 2.0 range, or even like 1.8, it's fine. Career yards per out run is 2.46. Contested catch rate 66.7, which is fine. First down per route run 12.83, which is good. Man yard per out run 2.83, and zone 2.54. Not a lot of concern. Seems like a good role player in the NFL. Really no red flags.
Yeah, I really liked this guy on tape. I didn't know I was gonna like him as much as I did. And honestly, I there's a couple aspects of his game I want to watch a little bit more on, especially after seeing how Jake graded him out, because he gave him quite better marks in the route technique than I did, even though I thought he displayed some pretty good route technique. But in terms of release and manipulation movement, I didn't see as much as I'd like to. But he beats press real well with quickness and from the release and threat of speed. Don't see a super diverse release package, and I think that's why I gave him lower marks. But just thinking back to his tape, he beats people off the line pretty easily. So I do want to go and see if there's something I'm missing there. Definitely see some nuance mid-route, but not overly technical in general, in my opinion. But I do think he separates really well with raw speed. I thought his ball skills were really good. I would like to see him just in general more contested catches, but I think it's just the fact that he's kind of separating from these guys, which is why he's not in those situations as much. But really good ball control, really good ball tracking in general. Don't see many balls hit the ground other than his quarterback, who is dog shit, in my opinion. Either firing it over his head or behind him. Attacks the ball at the highest point. I just think he has outstanding hands. In terms of athleticism, I mean, the dude jumps off the screen. Excellent burst through the stem to stack defenders, and he stacks them fast. And when I say that, he's getting around them and then back over top of them into the stem of the route to the point where the quarterback just needs to get the ball over these guys' heads and give them a chance. Near elite acceleration. I think he's 0 to 100 almost instantly. Can start and stop without really stopping. So like those stopping goes, it's almost like all in one phase, to the point where he's just making a little tiny kind of move backwards, but he's still going forward, and it's really, really challenging for a defender to stick with that. I thought he showed excellent balance through contact post catch as well, really slippery, and displays good lateral movement to evade defenders. You see him all over the punt return team. I mean, dude is dominating from that regard. In general, I thought his awareness was fine. He definitely recognizes, zones and kind of doesn't really sit into them necessarily, but he kind of flows into them. The guy, it's really interesting. It's like he's never stops moving in a way. Good field vision. I mean, clearly after the catch, he sees the field and he's able to navigate it. And in general, I thought he actually put on some pretty good tape in terms of blocking as well. I think he has good technique when he's actively engaged. He's just not always engaged as much as a guy like Tate, who is like every single play, he's like trying to, dominate his dude. That's not really as much what Casey's doing, but when he's doing it, he's doing it well. So yeah, I mean, he got a 66.5 for me. One of the higher marks, definitely. I mean, my highest mark was Carnell Tate, but honestly, I could see myself with a second review of some of these skill sets that he would approach that 68, at least get close to it. So I really, really like Concepcion. I think his skill set is going to translate really well into this NFL. What do you think, Jake?
Dude, this was the surprisingly like most excited that I got out of all four of the wide receivers. Man, I watched LSU, South Carolina, Notre Dame, and highlights. I guess I'll cover on the two areas where I guess we have the biggest gaps. So I'll talk a little bit about route technique, and I'll talk a little bit about the ball skill issues that I saw. Mm-hmm. So with the route technique, I just said Casey really does a tremendous job standing out here, especially in his slot press snaps, significant breaks, infectious digs, oozing understanding of manipulation to gain an extra step without having the elite athleticism that you'll see. Something I found was missing in the lemon tape that I get here with KC, really shown off at 542, quarter three against, who was this? It was against LSU. Sorry, I should have put that in there. Against LSU, it was around the 50-yard line. KC's like pressed pretty hard at the line while he was in the slot. He just does a single 1-2 hand fight, digs in, then just bursts past the defender, and he's literally wide open. He's gone. Fucking quarterback play is god awful. Doesn't even get the target. Dude ends up quarterback. He ends up having to break the play up and runs through the middle of the offensive line for like a 4-yard gain. It's pretty insane. Like when you watch his all 22, especially of like the game tape, like the amount of times that he's creating massive plays by himself was just exceptional. So what I did was I tried to find as much as I could back in 2023 when he really, really showed out as an 18-year-old at North Carolina State. And here's the best part about him. He was doing the same fucking shit as an 18-year-old. And he has truly missed no time, even though there's these small injuries that have been kind of banging him around. My only issue with him comes with the ball skills that I didn't see in the North Carolina State tape. I only saw it at A&M. So what I'm going to believe is more often than not, this is going to be a timing issue more than it will be really his hands. But this is where I knocked him big. He had 3 drop touchdowns in the 3 games that I watched, all of which were placement oriented, but they still went through his hands. One of which was against South Carolina. It was a lack of concentration, borderline arrogance on the reception to think he won't feel contact and immediately drops. It doesn't reoccur in that tape, but it does in other games. His hand speed flashes in and out, but had to hit him here and at ball tracking for his delayed hands at times. And I don't think the delayed hands are intentional. Like, I don't think he's trying to play that as a disguise. I think his hands are delayed due to the general inability to know the timing of potentially the quarterback. Last thing here is especially noticeable in the red zone, especially looking at the LSU tape at 7:55 left in Q2. Last thing here, I'll just put for his overall review. Concepcion is such a what-if player. If he cleans up a lot of the grime on the outside, as a score alludes to, he can and will be the elite producer in the NFL that we thought he could be at 18. I feel very confident about saying that. His ability to line up in the slot, he had a 34% slot rate, as Uriah alluded to. He also lines up at the X and the Y with seamless ability to beat the press, beat zone, and show domination against the field anywhere he's standing. But the dude has noodle arms when it comes to dealing with contested catches. And that elongates into his hands, that then turns into ramen that just doesn't bring the spice, you know? But in all sincerity, KC manipulates, he punishes, and then he falls flat with his hand-eye coordination at times in crucial moments, especially at his time in Texas A&M. I honestly think that this is the wide receiver that has the highest ceiling so far of these 4 wide receivers, and I can very well see him being, I'm not going to say Jackson Smith and Jigba because I don't think he plays like Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I can see him being that guy that people sleep on in this draft, get drafted in the right circumstance, and turn into a legitimate NFL changing wide receiver.
Dude, I love hearing that. Because this is kind of a guy that when I threw on the sheets, I guess we'll probably end up sharing these. I think we have in the past, like kind of what it looks like.
Definitely.
And it's just like a general bucket of like things that we think are important. We have seen over time matter to successful wide receivers, but there's a plethora of other metrics out there that we don't put onto this little table for the purpose of this podcast that I look at just in case. So as you guys were both like, surprisingly, in my opinion, immediately I could see how excited Billy was about this player. And I was like, oh, okay. This doesn't always happen with us, especially, when it was the opposite feeling I got from Lemon, where you guys were both like, well, I'm like, well, shit, But then again, it followed up with Jake being like, hey, this kid is something. So then I just kind of went through and headed over to look at some of the other metrics. And man, there's a lot to like here. The biggest thing I came across was something that Jake had brought up. And I was going to ask you about his drops, because that seems to be one of the biggest knocks comparatively, at least to the first 4 guys that we have here, which I think, generally speaking, a lot of people will think that these are kind of at least top 6 wide receivers coming into this draft, 4 of the top 6.
Yeah.
And his drop rate is 10.3, where comparatively you have like Lemon at 2.5. Jordyn Tyson was 1.6, and Carnell Tate was 0. That's I believe 7 drops on the season last season from Casey Concepcion. So like you said, hopefully it's the timing thing is what you had mentioned. You guys weren't exactly knocking his hands, but
I certainly wasn't. Jake was more than me.
Yeah, he got dinged hard. He got dinged hard, honestly, in the hands, and it's funny that he ends up evening out at our end all grade, because I definitely gave him a lot more bonus in his route running, because I do think that he is a significantly more defined route runner than Billy did. And that's not saying that Billy hit him hard or anything like that. I just think that that's where our gaps were. I hit him hard at ball skills, and Billy hit him hard at his route technique.
But to be fair, I do think, just as I was watching the tape, that I was being hypercritical for sure of that route technique. In general, I'm hypercritical of route technique. I want to see like really refined stuff. But also, I gave him a almost the same grade you gave him in terms of contested catch, but I didn't really knock him on the hands, because the tape I saw pretty sure hands in general. Now that's why I want to go watch a little bit more, and I'm going to seek out those drops to see kind of how they occurred. It sounds like you're saying timing, maybe late hands, or not hands not getting there at the right time kind of thing. So we'll see. But yeah, all great stuff, really.
But there's a lot to like about this guy.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Cool. I'll let you guys finish up with the last one. I'm going to take off and do what I do at night. So appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care of the family.
Have a good night.
Yep. Love you guys.
Peace out.
Love you.
Much love. Alrighty. And then there were 2. Matt in the comments on YouTube, please don't do that. The next Wicks. No. I think this guy has a little bit more refined just technique, skill sets in general. I wouldn't say that. Let's hope for
well, no, I think it's a good quick conversation though. I think it's really important to differentiate what like a true uncontested drop looks like versus what Casey Concepcion was having to deal with. That being said, like when we are trying to grade these guys out, we're trying to use the entirety of the pool that we've ever watched, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
as Billy told me a couple years back when I was really starting to do this, it was really about trying to compare to the elite pro wide receiver. How does this guy gauge to the NFL quality play? And it's like when I'm thinking through of literally right now, my 5 for hands, like all down the board would probably be Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? Like I am using his hands and the fact that he is so capable of doing what he can do, given that he actually doesn't have like the craziest catch radius. And I do think that Casey Concepcion also doesn't have the craziest catch radius. So how do I best benefit from using that tape that I'm watching on a regular basis from Jackson Smith-Njigba and then translating it here off of that trait, if you know what I mean? So I just want to say that the concerns that I have for Casey Concepcion, I think could easily get cleaned up. It's just, can I see this a little bit more in actual practice with a quarterback that I have a little bit more faith in? And by all means, if it does continue, I would be very, very quickly to get off of him. I just think that the upside here is just pretty sky high.
Yeah, and in terms of like with the tape that I watched, like it really felt like he was using his hands. He goes up and attacks the ball. Like there's certainly some catches that come into the body downfield, but it really felt like that, there's some like errant targets a little bit over the head. He's, contorting body and going up and getting it. And so when I see that, I think if I'm going to see drops, it's not going to be so much like the dude has a technique problem with his hands specifically. It could be, like you're saying, more timing and getting the hands there, where it's like the hands are good, but it's like they're not in the right place at the right time necessarily in certain situations, which sounded like it's more contested catch. So I'm going to go seek that out and see what that produces in terms of the grade. I don't think it's going to be far off from where it is, but he may drop a little bit in some areas and rise a little bit in others, and it may even out at the end of the day, almost like our grades did here. So
yeah, did you see the LSU tape? I didn't check.
No, that's the only one I didn't see, and I'll watch that after this.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. There's a touchdown rep in that game. I'd love for you to be like hypercritical on.
Yeah,
I won't talk too much about it, but it's interesting because he finishes the catch. I just think the technique is really bad. So I'd love to hear what you have to see about it, because I could just be looking at it the wrong way.
We'll circle back at that at the beginning of next week's episode, just to at least touch on it. What I found there. So good stuff. Really, really good stuff, Jake. Love it. All right, we're gonna hit one more here today. Last thing I wanted to say about Concepcion is that athleticism wise, for me, and he gets the highest grade for both of us out of all the 4 prospects we're talking about today. But for me, he was like 4 points higher, about 3.5 to 4 points higher than anyone else in overall athleticism. And I mean, that's big, and that's a big part of the NFL. Like, you have to be able to produce after the catch, especially for fantasy purposes, to really be effective at the level we want. So that's something that really stood out to me. Okay. Keep it moving here. Our last one we're going to hit on is Jordyn Tyson, a guy who, man, I thought I was going to like him a little bit more than I did. Like, you liked him, I think, a little bit more than me, even so. But we were very close, like a point or two. So for me on this one, okay, so real quick, let's hit on the data since we don't have Uriah here. Jordyn Tyson, the data kind of lines up with what I saw, in my opinion. So let's jump into it. Yards after the catch per reception, 4.3, very low mark. ADOT, 11.7. That's pretty good stuff. Slot percentage, 25, pretty low. Yards per team pass attempt, 1.7. You'd like to see that above 2. Yards per route run, 2.37, pretty good mark. Contested catch, 43.8, which is pretty low, to be honest. First down per route run, 12.33%, pretty good. Man yards per route run, 3.02, and then zone yards per route run, 2.18. Some decent marks there, some that are lower than average. When it comes to the film for me, let me get back to it. Just lost it. There it is. I think he relies a little bit too much on athleticism in regard to route technique. He does have an excellent single move and shuffle releases to beat press, but I think he lacks great technique on the whole, above average burst and speed, but lacks yards after the catch ability despite that speed. So there's some good, there's some meh. Like the route technique is pretty good for the most part. I think he has trouble with beating press. I don't think he really shows too much manipulation movement, but does have a really, really filthy jab step that he can use mid route that really separates himself from defenders. So he got a pretty good separation score from me. I do think he uses some good pacing. So he's got decent technique there. The ball skills are above average in general, but you do see some bobbles and drops here. So there is some slight concern for me. But in general, you see pretty good ball tracking, good extension for the ball, attacks it at the high point, pretty good body control as well to kind of get his frame on the target. Athleticism, like I mentioned, he's fast and he has good burst, but it's all kind of before and during the route. I don't think that the acceleration, deceleration, I'm sorry, I don't think that the elusiveness is there given all that speed and burst. Lacks, and I think part of it is he lacks really good bend, like curvilinear movement below the waist and and that lateral fluidity to kind of elude defenders. But he, with space, he can break it wide open because he's super fast. So there is that. 61.5, one of the lower grades out of the guys that we, and where is it, the lowest grade, I think, actually, out of the guys we mentioned here, by a good bit. I think his grade kind of matches for you Lemon, but I just see more technical prowess with Lemon that kind of boosted his score, those 3 points higher, which is kind of significant, given our scale. What do you see out of Tyson?
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that he is. I think that his overarching library of moves is super limited, and I think that has its own constraints to it for sure. The one thing that I'll include here is that because of his work that he does specifically with that left foot jab, like you talked about, it's premeditated, but it does lack burst off the dig itself. It is super performative. I actually love how performative it is, and maybe that's why he ends up doing a little bit better here than with you. I did think that because of that, he was able to attack multiple different zone reads in a few different areas because of that singular move better than a lot of other wide receivers that we watched, simply because of how he's able to time the movement. And that could also just be like consistent work with the same quarterback over a period of time. I know he worked with Sam Lovett for multiple years, so it could make sense. But I did say swift inside leverage play, acceleration to burn, gets held, and didn't get the DPI call. That was, I forgot what, I think that was Texas Tech with 8:23 left in the second. He does whips, curls at the stem, was exceptional, but he doesn't have a ton of nuance. I did also ding him similar to you in the ball skills section, so I won't cover too much there, but he just doesn't snag. He does have shorter arms and shorter radius, so I was expecting him to be a little bit more impactful just because he did get a lot of love in this particular section. One thing I will say is that his overarching ability to just like catch under duress is definitely present. He's just not able to like snag away from defenders. And this is the unfair realization of guys like a Carnell Tate who are going to stand out and be able to build off of those skills. He's physically more gifted there, and I'm fully aware of that. But the fact is that that's why he gets stronger ability there and loses something else in his elusiveness, because he's 6'3" and looks like a fucking tree running at times, right? So it's like, that's how this game works. I agree with you about athleticism. I think it's very present, but I don't think he takes full control over his athleticism. The one thing I did want to note specifically with him that I didn't note with really anybody else is his injury history is the most concerning, and I also think the most impactful. We're talking about in 2022, he tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL. He ends up missing 2023 altogether because of the 3 ligament tears. He ends up breaking his collarbone in 24, and then he has a hamstring strain in 25. The hamstring strain I thought was super interesting because on the Texas Tech tape, you really see him laboring it. He pulls up twice on 2 different routes.
I saw that. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, because so much of what this guy is doing feels limited. And I'm wondering to myself, and this isn't me baking anything into a score. This is just me trying to understand like the ceiling aspect of this player. I think that there's probably a little bit more in Jordyn Tyson than we were able to see in 2025. So I dug into his 2024 tape, which was basically him being a year and a half removed from his 3 ligament tear. Just before he ends up breaking his collarbone. Man, what a fucking sad story.
That's
and
insane.
I do think that he looks significantly more athletic. Like, I think his athleticism comes off the screen significantly more. So I would highly recommend adding that to your repertoire just to see what you can kind of glean from the rest of his tape there. But I agree with you. I still also have him at a 62.5. I think you had him at a 61.5. He gets dinged in a lot of areas. He loses points off of zone awareness. He loses points off of field vision. His run after the catch ability is just, I think it's physically there. I just don't think that he has the field vision to be able to take advantage of it. And I really do end up giving him the most amount of points in his footwork. I do think that he actually is a very strong foot technician. I do love me some feet, but his biggest issue is that I do think that he's limiting himself because of him laboring through injury. So with all that being said, given how little he's used in motion to overly rely on his need to take an immediate pre-step before the defender to gain leverage, which you do see in a lot of modern day wide receiver play, Tyson does a great job defining his own elusiveness and speed through an early dig that you'll see over and over again. He motions, he continuously uses it to create separation and define early route definition. He ends up losing it in typically like post-stem, but that is what it is. And he's a relatively unrefined wide receiver that has a good base to expand into a top-level wide receiver if properly coached, and I think if he stays healthy. I think that he's one of those guys that, here's the thing, is like when I watch these 4 dudes, right, I think Carnell Tate is most realistically the NFL-ready wide receiver who will probably get somewhere between 75 to 90% snaps week 1, as long as he aligns with the head coach and the offensive coordinator in that offense. I think Concepcion has the highest ceiling, but will realistically probably have maybe some of those growing pains in year 1 that a lot of people don't want to see. Makai Lemon will be used and still probably be your 850 to 1,000 yard receiver over his career. I just don't think you'll ever get significantly more out of him from that. But Jordyn Tyson is the guy that I sit here and I see flashes, I see moments, and I'm like, he could either be a super shit bust or he could have a similar ceiling to a guy like Concepcion in those small moments that I see him define himself. That all being said, my biggest issue will always be with guys like him, whether or not he'll ever be able to take it to the next level. And I just don't think he can. I think he's just unfortunately going to be capped. And it makes me a little sad because there are moments in his tape where I was like, ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
then you just don't see it consistently enough, right? So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, Jordyn Tyson, the way he moves is very unique. Like it's different than most players. He has this really interesting, like upright kind of running style, but also really like you mentioned, like the footwork is there, so it's kind of like nuanced and has like really his ability to kind of turn and break is very unique. And you mentioned, I think, as kind of like a soccer player almost, the way that he moves around the field. It's much less like low center of gravity and like wide gate kind of. It's a lot more like narrow in the way that he moves, and it's very interesting. So I always liked how his body kind of moves down the field and he's available for targets, and he kind of is this frame that feels like he is available for targets and can make himself really available. He just, like you said, needs to develop a little bit more of that skill set. Really interesting. Concepcion and Repertoire. We have a lot of flavor on this podcast today. I like it. I like it. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff there. I hope everybody enjoyed the first iteration of the prospect profiles this year. We'll probably hit on a couple more wide receivers before we jump into some running backs, and we'll eventually get into the tight ends as well. Probably won't do the quarterbacks like we do this, but we'll talk about them for sure. We don't grade them out really like this. We're hitting the skill positions, honing in that skill set of ours. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed those. If there's anybody you really want to see that we don't talk about or haven't talked about or you don't think we're going to talk about, definitely jump in the Discord and let us know about that. All right, we're going to hit on one trade before we get out of here, one dynasty trade. This is a dynasty podcast, even though we aren't talking that much, fantasy, market values, all that stuff, more prospect profiles this time of year. But let's hit on this one. Random league here, 12-team Superflex, PPR 0.5, tight end premium, start 10. Okay, start 10, 12-team. The 103 plus the 204 for Loveland and the 310. The 103 and the 204 for Colston Loveland and the 310. Yeah, it's an interesting trade. I'm probably going to go Loveland here because I think that he would be one of the better, if not best players in this draft, especially given what we know after year one, right? Knowing that he's gotten so involved in the offense and looks to be, one of the main targets here for Chicago. And then the 103, as we've talked about, it could be one of these wide receivers we talked about today with all these question marks. It could be Fernando Mendoza in, very limited situations, but is probably not. So I think I'm okay at if we're just making this trade today and we're not saying, oh, you can wait till you're closer to the draft, all that, if you want to get more insight. I'm probably just going with the player that we know has elite upside. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, that'd be the side that I would be getting. This is a trade and non-trade.
Okay.
I literally received it while we were on, and I was like, yeah, I think that is going to do. I didn't hit accept yet, but I think that's a completely fine counter. I think my initial offer was Loveland for the 103, 212, and the 401, and they came back with the 103 and the 204 with Loveland adding like a small plus on top. I think it's a good compromise. And I agree with you. Like at the end of the day, I think if you can still get, healthy T. Higgins output out of Carnell Tate, I think I'd be really happy with that as like a 1-to-1 swap with Loveland. I'm not too concerned about that. And you get probably a dart throw at the 204. Where my build is at in that specific league, I really just want to kind of acquire value, and I feel more confident with Loveland moving forward. But I think that that's like a really good spot to be in. I think you can really do quite a bit at the 103. But all of that to say, all of these micro markets, especially with a lot of the content that's coming out about Makai Lemon, it's getting a little crazy, man. We're at a place, and by all means, I think that his advanced metrics look good. I'm not trying to poo-poo them, and I can see why he is successful in USC and why he was able to define himself. But when we're really talking about high upside players, I just don't see it there. And so I would have to go with someone like Tate. And I do think that you probably feel that the upside is still relatively ceiling to there. So, this is definitely one of those drafts where there's a lot. We're going to definitely see a lot of players. I can already tell. We're going to see a lot of players that we're going to like. I already watched a couple of other dudes that we don't have on the list yet, and they have some really exciting traits. And the fact is that with half these guys, if they fall into the right setup, they'll be incredibly successful. Can you imagine Carnell Tate playing with Cam Ward? Fuck me, man. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Put him into a Brian Daboll offense. I know for a fact Carnell Tate is going to eat. And so it's there is a place, there is a mindset where this 103 can happily grow. This builds, though, I just don't have that space and time. So yeah, thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. And sorry, just to kind of full circle this thing, just kind of, discussing how you're, the 103 is going to be likely one of these wide receivers we're talking about. I mean, maybe we get into the running backs and we're like, oh, okay, well, maybe one of these guys, stretches up into that area. I don't think we're going to see that, but just, saying anything can happen after we watch the tape, of course, and get into it. But what I want to say is that, and I mentioned this earlier, to highlight the ceiling of this current class, we just went over the top 4 guys in this class, right? Consensus, from an NFL draft perspective, yada, yada, yada. None of them got over 68, 69, right? None of them got over 70, that's for sure. Last year, I personally had 4 wide receivers over the 70 mark, 73, 74 and a half, 75, and 76. And that was Burden, McMillan, Ibuka, and Hunter, which makes sense if you think about the talent level of those guys and also what they were able to do, year one in the NFL. Obviously, their range in the production and the context matters with guys like Burden and yada, yada, yada. But point being is talent level, ceiling-wise, just doesn't seem to be there after going through, these first 4 prospects. So it's worth mentioning, just because we are trying to, keep a consistent process, right? And this is the same one we did last year. And so, I think that's not a good indication, but it's an indicator, and it's something worth mentioning and knowing that the ceiling is, I think, a little bit capped on this class when it comes to all the players, which we knew coming into it, but especially, the wide receivers as we go through them compared to past classes and historical performers and historical talents. So, okay. That's all I got. Jake, anything else before we get out of here?
No, just super, super quick. I promise. I just wanted to say, no, I promise. I promise. I just wanted to say, this is the first year that Billy and I are doing the actual same process, right? Like last year, this is the same process for Billy. This is year 1 for me, year 2 for Billy in this specific spreadsheet format that he's going with. And I think, one, it was incredibly successful for him last year. I really do like a lot of the work that he did. And it's been incredibly challenging for me to work through it because I naturally have already found myself, and I think we're seeing it. I might be a little bit more giving on route technique, but more negative or critical on athleticism,
ball skills, or whatever
it might be. And it's really interesting because yet the players are still super small sample size. It's been 4 guys, fully aware of that, and it happens to be in a position that we both particularly gel really well with at wide receiver. But it's super interesting to me that they're almost falling out at a very similar overall score, and yet are ranking very similarly. The biggest difference between the two of us was Jordyn Tyson and Makai Lemon, and realistically, we had Tyson at around the same score. I was a little bit more critical of Makai Lemon. All that to say, it's been incredibly beneficial. And I think hopefully over this window of us going through this process, one, we'll learn a lot more about what each other is seeing and ideally teach each other off of this work. I think that this is going to hopefully bring us closer to a place where we're either not seeing the game the same way, but we can at least talk about what we're seeing in a similar way to better understand what or how we're grading out in those specific places. And by all means, like, I don't want Billy and I to have the same grades for players. I don't want us to look at route technique and be like, well, we both hit the nail on the head at 24.5 out of 30 points, right? Like, that's not what I'm trying to get at. It's more so being able to look at each other in the eyes and be like, wait, we're 6 points off. Like, that's pretty massive. Why? Like, where is that gap? And be able to talk through that, not just for you guys, but also for each other to see where those gaps are. And like, I already really appreciate Billy even like owning up to the point of being like, I didn't see that with Casey Concepcion. Let me go back to the tape and watch it. And the same thing for me after tonight, I'm going back to Makai Lemon and being like, what didn't I notice in his route technique that I was hitting him so hard against, right? Like, why was I so forgiving to those other 3 wide receivers and so hard on Makai? That has to be part of the process. What we tell you today isn't, I think, our formalized or finalized reviews of these players, because we're going to keep going through this iteration. But I think right where we are after these first few watches, I do feel really confident in already where this process is going, and just like hearing us not banter but like talk about it off of one another, because it's incredibly illuminating for me, and I really do appreciate all of not just the time and effort you put into this, but the fucking years, dude. Like, you've been doing this for years and you have gotten to this point. Like, you are definitely someone that I trust so much in this process, and I just wanted to say, like, I really appreciate that you're even entrusting me to go through it with you, so thank you.
No, I mean, I appreciate that, but yeah, no, you're one of the few people who I respect, because I know that you care about this shit at the level I do. So it's you know, that's why I want to go through this process with you, and I love that we're both using the same grading system, because it's going to be a better test to if it works, and to how we need to change things and all that. And I do think after this year, we'll probably get together after and be like, oh, maybe we need to add this skill, or maybe we need to reduce the weighting on this skill because it's overweighting blocking or whatever, which is not a huge skill set for fantasy or for their success in the NFL, whatever it may be, if we determine that. But the other thing, just that along with what you're saying, is that what this really helps, which is one of the hardest things about this, is defining what these actual skills are that we're grading. Because the more that we find those differences, it's not so much that I want to be aligned with the grade, I want to be aligned with what we're grading, right? And I think that sometimes can be the difference. And then as we talk about it, we're gonna be like, oh no, that's I need to not be grading that piece of, you know, what I'm kind of combining into this skill set that actually needs to be either part of a different one, or we need to break it out, and yada yada yada, and those kind of things. So having another person to kind of go and, you know, the check and balance of that is huge. And yeah, I love this shit. So I'm very, very, very happy that we're doing it together. It's going to be a really, really fun year. So very exciting stuff. We will have more next week. We're pretty much going to do this kind of format for future weeks, so stick with us. Really appreciate everybody's time, everybody who stayed here live in the comments, YouTube comments, all that stuff. Join us in our Discord so you can talk to us more, ask us more questions, and we can continue these conversations. Jake, appreciate you, brother. We're getting out of here. That's it. That's all we got. All right. We'll catch y'all next week. Find us on socials at Dynasty Underdog. Peace out, fam.